Welcome, everyone, to the Kenya Wantam Note Tam movement, the KWM podcast.
Good to be here.
We're back for another deep dive, and today, well, we're unpacking a really significant movement, something that's really shifting the conversation in Kenya.
Absolutely. The KWM, it's definitely making waves.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, essentially, is to explore the core messages, the motivations, and, the impactful approach of the KWM, particularly how it connects to recent events and that collective voice we're hearing from Kenyans.
And I think it's important, like you said, to stress we're looking at this through the lens of the KWM's own sources, right? Understanding their perspective.
Exactly. We're dissecting their narrative, their take on what's happened. We're not here to endorse any particular political view, but really just to illuminate the ideas in the material they've shared with us in the public.
Makes sense.
And we've got some, frankly, compelling material to explore, especially focusing on how a specific date has been described by them as a real turning point.
Yeah, what's particularly striking, I think, in the KWM's articulation is how they pinpoint June 25th, 2025.
Yeah.
They see it as this truly pivotal moment.
Okay.
So this deep dive will really focus on understanding why that specific date is seen as so significant in their view, how it highlights what they call a broken trust.
Broken trust. Right.
And crucially, what tangible actions this movement is trying to build in direct response. It's really about distilling the core feelings, the sentiments of a nation seeking accountability, seeking tangible change, at least as the KWM expresses it.
Okay, so understanding this critical moment they identify, what does this all mean for the everyday Kenyan listening? And maybe what can you learn about the power of collective action when promises, well, seem to fall short? Let's really get into this.
Let's do it.
We begin with June 25th, 2025. According to the KWM's narrative, this wasn't just, another day of protests. They describe it very pointedly as the day a mask fell.
Strong words.
Very. And the sources paint an incredibly stark picture, almost indelible, really. You might recall seeing the images maybe on your streets, maybe just on your phone screens.
Yeah, those images were everywhere.
Kids huddled, faces streaked with sweat, fear. Many Kenyans remember it so vividly because maybe they were there or they knew someone who was directly impacted.
It felt very personal for a lot of them.
Exactly. And the KWM asserts that what unfolded on the streets that day, the tear gas filling the air, the batons striking, and even, they claim, live bullets tearing through young dreams, it all exposed a profound, undeniable betrayal.
Which really raises a vital question, doesn't it? Why did the KWM sources describe this day as breaking something fundamental?
What was that something?
Well, it's clear the movement views this as much more than just a physical clash. In their eyes, June 25th was like a moment of revelation. It revealed the true nature of leadership, as they saw it.
How so?
They point directly to what they perceive as the government's dismissive response. Labeling protesters as just misbehavior or even criminals.
Right. I remember hearing those terms.
And there were claims, too, according to the KWM sources, about agitators or foreign influence being the real cause.
The standard playbook, some might say.
Perhaps. But the KWM's counter-narrative is very straightforward. They insist these were peaceful young people, just seeking basic needs, food, school, jobs, the essentials.
And instead of being heard.
They were met with force. That's the KWM's framing. A stark moment of realization for many Kenyans, they argue, that fundamentally altered their view of authority.
And that perceived betrayal on June 25th, as the KWM sources frame it, that really becomes the bedrock for their whole concept of broken trust.
Exactly. It's central.
So how do they elaborate on that? I mean, specifically, how do the KWM sources contrast President Ruto's initial image, that hustler narrative he built?
Which was very effective, you have to admit.
It was. That relatable image, his promises to uplift common Kenyans. How do they contrast that with the actions seen on June 25th? It seems like a powerful juxtaposition they're making.
Oh, it really is. And the KWM sources, they don't pull any punches here.
Yeah.
They vividly recall his speeches, the stories he shared about daily struggles, boda riders, for instance, emphasizing how he seemed to genuinely get it, to understand your struggles.
That connection was key.
They say he wore no filters, used simple language, and it worked. Many believed him, cast their votes based on that feeling of understanding.
Oh, okay.
But then the KWM sources ask what followed that understanding, and their answer is blunt. Tear gas, batons, blood on the pavement.
Wow.
The very leader who, they argue, once championed the hustlers became the one whose government, in their view, crushed them. This, for the KWM, was the moment the mask truly slipped. It revealed, they say, a reliance on spin and force rather than courage or compassion.
So it's a narrative aimed at fundamentally redefining that relationship, that perceived contract between the governed and the government.
Precisely. Redefining the terms of engagement.
Okay, so if we connect this moment of broken trust to the broader picture, the KWM sources then argue pretty emphatically that evidence of failure is everywhere.
Yeah, they don't see June 25th as an isolated incident, but more like a symptom of a larger problem.
And they aren't speaking generally, are they? They cite very specific, tangible examples, things impacting daily life.
Absolutely. They point to salaries being stuck, just stagnant, while the cost of living keeps climbing relentlessly. That's something everyone feels, right?
Certainly.
They talk about clinics being empty, lacking essential medicines, people suffering needlessly. Schools, they say, are like ghost towns. We're just falling apart. Kids still walking barefoot for miles sometimes, only to find no teachers or resources when they get there.
It paints a grim picture.
It does. And the KWM material really underscores what they see as a consistent pattern. Grand promises, big launches with photo ops, but then no follow-through, no actual delivery on the ground.
So this highlights, in their view, a critical, painful disconnect between the official announcements and the lived reality for most Kenyans.
A widening gap, that's the argument.
And that gap, that glaring disconnect as the KWM sees it, leads us to this really insightful distinction they make. The real Kenya versus the PR Kenya.
Ah, yes, that framing is quite powerful.
It is. Talk us through that. How do the KWM sources portray what they call Ruto's Kenya, the PR Kenya, and how does that contrast with the listener's everyday experience, the real Kenya?
Well, according to the KWM sources, Ruto's Kenya is all about stage tours, new hashtags, and loud launches. It's presented as a continuous performance, really, designed for the cameras, projecting this image of constant progress and success.
The highlight reel.
Exactly. And this, they argue, stands in stark contrast to your Kenya, the listener's Kenya, which they describe as a reality of, well, empty clinics, unaffordable maize flour, a whole list of broken promises.
So while the headlines might focus on Nairobi's advancements,
the lived experience for most, they suggest, is dramatically different. And what's really interesting here, and quite powerful, is the KWM's emphasis on local, tangible action. They assert that real change is actually happening without him, meaning without direct intervention or even recognition from the top leadership.
so bottom-up change.
Precisely. They give concrete examples. McQuinney quietly fixing water pumps for their communities. No big launch event, just getting water flowing.
Practical stuff.
Right. Or Kisses markets, which they say are working efficiently, serving people without needing press cameras or official visits. And Moronga, they highlight building schools not for photo ops, but for the actual education of children. Again, no press conferences needed. So this fundamentally underscores the KWM's idea. While one side is busy selling slogans focused on PR, the other side, everyday Kenyans, are busy surviving. And crucially, they're actively building, actively improving their own lives and communities from the ground up.
It's a narrative of resilience, really. Self-reliance and community action taking center stage.
Absolutely, a sort of quiet determination.
No, the KWM sources really put a spotlight on Gen Z's role in all this, don't they? Asserting that this generation, well, they didn't wait for another election. They saw through the system.
Yes, they credit Gen Z with being the spark in many ways. They describe how this generation actively engaged. They marched, chanted, posted, showed up. In huge numbers, remember.
Very visible, very vocal.
But their hopes, their demands for change, were tragically met, according to the KWM, with police boots and tear gas canisters.
A harsh response.
And that experience, the KWM claims, led to this crucial, undeniable realization for them, that leadership that gasses children is not leadership at all. That was a turning point in perception for that generation, they argue. It solidified their resolve.
And did that have a broader effect beyond Gen Z?
Well, that realization then created quite the significant ripple effect, according to the KWM's analysis. While Gen Z undeniably led the charge, the sources claim millennials soon joined them, and older generations. They might not have been on the streets in the same numbers, but they watched. And their watching, the KWM interprets not as weakness or apathy, but as a profound form of rejection.
Silence as rejection. That's an interesting take.
Yes, they argue this silence is actually a powerful, impactful form of dissent. The sources assert that the awakening you can't gas away is happening now across the country. Kenyans, they say, have stopped clapping. They've stopped showing up for the official events.
A quiet withdrawal.
And their silence, it's described now as being louder than chants.
Hmm.
The KWM's perspective is basically that the current leadership knows it has lost the people, fundamentally. And this growing chasm, they believe, can't be spun away with PR, can't be gassed away with force, can't just be ridden out. It represents a fundamental shift.
Okay, so if they're not waiting anymore, if they're rejecting the old ways, what are Kenyans building instead? The KWM must identify some concrete actions, right? This new shift must look like something.
Exactly, and they do. They point to concrete, grassroots actions already underway. Things like communities actively forming village forums to demand answers directly from their local leaders, holding them accountable.
Grassroots accountability.
Yes, and creating sophisticated WhatsApp groups that track every failed promise,
Yeah.
using technology to monitor performance with a really keen eye, and establishing accountability squads that will not be silenced.
Wow, accountability squads. That sounds organized.
It suggests a more structured approach to demanding results. And the KWM calls this whole collective effort Kenya's Quiet Reset.
Kenny's quiet reset. Okay.
It's described as fundamentally a refusal to passively clap for broken promises anymore. Instead, it's a clear collective demand for tangible results. Things like clinics that are actually stocked with medicine, schools with qualified teachers actually present, roads that don't just wash away after the first rains,
The basics, done right.
and leaders who stay and solve problems when things go wrong, rather than disappearing or making excuses. The focus, as the KWM highlights it, is intently on real numbers, demonstrable results.
So not just slogans or photo ops.
No, it's about asking how many classrooms were actually built, how many teachers actually hired, how many clinics actually stocked, how many farmers actually supported. They want these verified numbers on record, not as campaign promises, but as lived reality.
That sounds like a significant shift in expectations. It really does reveal a powerful call to action for real change, as articulated by the KWM.
If you're listening and you're inspired by this vision of a Kenya that works, that demands accountability and tangible results, well, the Kenya Wantam Notam movement seems to be where that conversation is happening, where many are finding that collective voice.
Absolutely. And if you want to be part of this quiet reset, if you want to share your own ideas that you think can help change your village, your city, your nation, we really encourage you, based on the movement's call, to visit www.wantamnotam.com. That's right. Go check it out, www.wantamnotam.com. You can create an account there, start sharing your ideas. It's all about collective action, they say, and demanding the Kenya you want to see.
It's framed as a platform for those solutions.
Okay, moving on. The KWM sources make another really strong, definitive statement that seems to redefine leadership itself, they say. Leadership is a verb, not a campaign poster.
That cuts deep, doesn't it?
It does. They argue that the traditional markers of power, the titles, the cabinet positions, the big motorcades sweeping through the streets, they just don't matter anymore to this awakened populace they describe.
The symbols have lost their power, perhaps.
That's what they suggest.
Yeah.
The sources state very clearly that the leader Kenyans will truly follow next is, and I quote, the one who stays, listens, solves, and delivers.
Action-oriented, not just rhetoric.
Exactly. It's presented as a complete redefinition of what true leadership looks like in this new era, shifting the focus entirely from talk to tangible action.
And this framing by the KWM, it really suggests a fundamental, maybe even lasting shift in expectations, doesn't it? Moving away from traditional politics where, let's face it, promises often suffice.
Or are expected to suffice.
Right. Moving from that to an absolute demand for tangible, undeniable impact. Yeah. It emphasizes that while current leaders might be busy holding press conferences, engaging in PR...
Doing the PR Kenya stuff?
Exactly. Kenyans themselves, according to the KWM, are already fixing it. In your villages, in your WhatsApp groups, your market stalls, your classrooms. The change is already happening, driven by the people.
So this perspective really empowers the individual, the community. It suggests the reset is already underway, as they put it, and it's not about passively waiting for someone else, some figurehead, to fix the nation's problem.
No, it's happening from the ground up, right now.
Yeah.
Driven by this collective will that they describe. It's quite an empowering message, actually.
It is. So as you reflect on this deep dive, listening to the perspective of the Kenya Wantam Notam movement, maybe consider this. In a world just saturated with promises, political promises especially, how do you differentiate? How do you tell the difference between a leader who just talks and one who truly acts?
That's a crucial question for everyone everywhere, really.
And maybe think about what specific, tangible actions in your own community could contribute to the kind of quiet reset the KWM describes. Moving beyond just slogans to real, measurable impact right where you are, something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.
So that brings us towards the end of this deep dive into the Kenya Wantum Notum movement. It seems pretty clear that the message they're conveying through their sources is really about empowering citizens, empowering you to demand real, measurable change.
And not just demand it, but to take action yourself, to build the Kenya they envision from the ground up.
Yeah, that seems to be the core.
And remember, that call to action remains absolutely central to the KWM's vision, as presented. Visit www.wantumnotam.com. That's where they encourage you to go, create your account, and join the conversation they're fostering.
It's positioned as a powerful platform for sharing your ideas that can help transform your village, your city, your nation. We really appreciate you tuning in and joining us on this exploration today.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
It has. Host speaker and expert speaker. Thank you for listening to the Kenya Wantum Notum Movement, KWM podcast.